So we were studying political and legal environment, and in political and legal environment, we now have to study about laws which protect consumers, or I should say, consumer protection legislation. Okay, so it is very important to safeguard consumers from the malpractices which may be followed by producers, because consumers, uh, if they stop trusting, then the whole economic system will again go back to the medieval ages where people were living for subsistence and not fulfilling their needs. So this trust is very important, and especially the trust among consumers that they will not be conned with, they will not be uh, defrauded, and they will be provided the goods and services which they are promised to. So for capitalism, it is very important that the consumers are protected in all respects. So different countries have different legislations in place which protect the consumers, and so there are some general guidelines or based on which these legislations are in place. So many countries have legislation which attempt to protect consumers from falling victim to unscrupulous and unethical businesses. Yes, these laws are very complex, but there are some general principles which will be common everywhere. Like, for example, we have consumer rights. So consumer rights basically come from Consumer Rights Act 2015. If we talk about UK, so in UK, there's a law, Consumer Rights Act 2015, that underlines the basic principles, basic provisions of consumer protection. These include the following facts, such as the seller must have legal title or ownership to the item they are actually selling. Seller must be entitled to sell such items. It should not be a fraudulent transaction where seller is selling something which do not belong to the seller. If seller fails to sell something which do not actually belong to the seller, then also consumer is protected, because it is responsibility of the seller to sell only those goods to which the seller has legal title and ownership of. Also, goods sold must be of satisfactory quality. They should be of the expected quality by the consumer. Always the consumer's expectation will be far more than what the producer is providing, but it should be of reasonable quality. And that's why the word satisfactory is used here. And to fit their intended purpose. So that it should be useful for the purpose for which the consumer is purchasing it. No doubt, producer is not making everything be tailor-made for each and every customer, but the basic needs should be fulfilled. When a buyer makes a purchase on the description of an item, for example, you're reading the label, you're looking at an advertisement in the TV or maybe newspaper or magazine, and because of that advertisement or reading that label, you are actually purchasing the product. So that simply means that you were you are actually induced by the description provided of the item, and that's why you're purchasing. So the description is very important here. If that description is not found in the actual product, then you have all the rights to return the product and get your money back 100%. So buyer makes a purchase. When the buyer makes a purchase based on the description, the goods must correspond with that description. If it is not corresponding to the announced description, IDT's description, then whole of the money needs to be refunded as per law. Next is when digital content like ebooks, like games, like movies, these are provided and there's some fault in that. Whether digital content is faulty, consumers are given a clear right to repair or a replacement. The consumers have the right to repair or replacement. In case of the goods not fitting description, they have the right to refund. They can return the product and refund, or get it replaced and get a proper product which matches with the description. So, for example, on Amazon or on Flipkart or any other way, eBay, let's say, you're purchasing a certain shirt, which is, let's say, white colored, and you're receiving a shirt which is gray in color, then that is not matching the description. You have the right to refund it and return it and get your 100% refund or get it replaced. All right. So these rights are in respect of goods. These are in respect of goods. Consumers also have rights in respect of services. So this legislation is actually also extended to services. If services are provided to a consumer, consumer has rights that the service being provided with due skill and care. Reasonable skill and care should be there. So also there should be reasonable length of time during which the service should be provided. Service should be provided at a reasonable price. There should not be extraordinary or hidden charges while providing the service. So these are the rights which a consumer has while receiving services. We'll look at an illustration. The provision of accountancy services would fall under the consumer rights legislation, yes. Should the accounts contain errors or be prepared too late for filing deadlines due to the firm of accountants preparing them, the customer may well have recourse against the firm. That means the customer can claim damages. Also, the customer can claim back the fees which the customer has paid to the accounting firm. So, for example, you are the consumer or customer. You are approaching an accounting firm, and that accounting firm has promised you that they will file your VAT returns. They promise you that they will prepare your accounts as well, and that's why they are charging you £150 for the quarter. And if the accounting firm fails to furnish VAT returns in time, VAT returns are needed to be furnished within 1 month and 7 days of the end of the quarter. So let's say they fail to file the returns till the due dates, and because of that, consumer is facing some legal prosecution, maybe interest, maybe penalty. All that penalty and prosecution can be recovered from accounting firm. So any interest paid or any penalty paid due to late filing of VAT return, which was a responsibility of accounting firm, they can be recourse against the firm and can be recovered from the firm as well. Right, so this is a basic example of how consumer protection legislation also safeguards a person against businesses which are providing services. This TYO6, Elena buys a television from After PLC, an online retailer of homewares. All right, so she's purchasing online. Basically, this problem arises when you are purchasing things online that the description is different and actually what you have received is totally different. When the television arrives, she discovers that it is different model, yes, and the size to the one she ordered. She might have ordered a 45-inch. She's received a 22-inch. Something like that has happened. She also finds that the screen image is blurred. Okay, so quality is also not satisfactory, and the remote control is faulty. This is a damaged product. This is not matching with the description. Also, it is not of satisfactory quality. So the consumer protection laws will kick in and they will help Elena get back her money, and does not work. So why is After PLC likely to have breached local consumer rights? I've told you 3 reasons. First, the quality is not satisfactory. Second, it is not matching with the description. Third, the product is faulty. Because of all the 3 reasons, After PLC is not actually in line with the consumer protection regulations, is not actually fulfilling all the conditions of consumer rights. So there's a breach of consumer law, and Elena is entitled to get full refund or replacement of the television which she has purchased. So basically, there's a law of contract as well, known as Contract Act. First, we need to understand what is a contract. So contract is a legally enforceable agreement. A contract is a legally enforceable agreement if agreement is there between two parties, between two or more parties. This can be two or more parties can be there, which are known as parties to the contract, which wants to enter into a legal relationship against some value or consideration, then that is a contract. What is a contract? Come again. The contract is something which is a legally enforceable agreement between multiple parties, more than one, right? And there's some value also or some consideration also. So the contract is against some consideration. When we look at buying and selling of goods and services, the consumer and the producer or the seller, they are actually entering into a contract. Consumer is paying a consideration against some value, maybe some services, maybe some goods. So this is a legally enforceable contract, and because the conditions of contract are breached, that's why there's consumer law in place. All right. So I would say that even if there is no consumer law, the basic rules of Contract Act, the basic provisions of Contract Act are also a safeguard. Generally, a contract is legally enforceable agreement between two or more parties. Such a contract is known as simple if it is not required to be in any particular form. Okay. So it is not necessary that the contract needs to be written and signed. It can be an oral, verbal contract also. It is commonly held misconception that all contracts must be written. This is a misconception. Come on. To be legally binding, it is not necessary that a contract needs to be written and signed. For a contract to be binding, the conditions which are required are there should be consideration, that the consideration should be legal, the parties to contract should be adult or maybe 16 years or more of age. It depends on country to country. The person should not be, the people involved in the contract should not be of unsound mind. They should not be barred by law to enter into a contract, and so on. There are so many requirements for contract to be valid, but the contract need not to be in a writing. That is not a requirement at all. Okay, it is just that in a written contract it becomes easy to prove. In a verbal contract, oral contract, it becomes very difficult to prove that yes, we had agreed on such and such terms. In fact, many contracts can be in other forms such as verbal contracts. However, in the event of disputes between parties, non-verbal contracts can be difficult to prove or enforce. Non-written contracts, sorry. So verbal contracts are very difficult to prove. That's why it is preferred to write down the terms and conditions on which the parties are agreeing. Otherwise, later on, there can be disputes on to what one had intended or said. That's why it is very important to keep the contract in writing form, but that is not a prerequisite of entering into a contract. So, features of a simple contract, there are some features. There should be an agreement. Agreement means both the parties are agreeing on the same terms, on same things in same sense. Okay, the parties must have agreed on the terms of the contract. Normally, this means one party has made an offer that has been accepted by other. So there should be an offer and there should be an acceptance against the offer. So the law of contract is huge, but we are just trying to understand the basic framework of law of contract. So there should be an offer and acceptance, which makes it an agreement. Agreement should have a consideration. Means both the parties are doing something against some value consideration. Okay. In many countries, both parties usually have to get some value for the contract. Each party must offer some consideration to the other, right? So can the contract law be different in different countries? Yes, definitely. These are human laws and these can differ from countries to countries. Next, there should be an intention to create legal relationship. So the intention should be there to create a legal relationship. It should not be like where one party is not ready to enter into a legal relationship and then also we are forming a contract. No, that will not be a valid contract. Both parties must clearly intend their relationship to be legally binding. For example, an informal arrangement to go shopping with a friend would not formally constitute a legally binding contract. So you told your friend, okay, I'll go shopping with you and you'll take me to movie. Not necessarily this is a contract. Why? Because there's no intention to create legal relationship, right? So jokes and fake promises, these will not be covered under intention to create legal relationships. Next, there should be capacity and legality of the consideration. Capacity to contract is of the person who is involving himself or herself in the contract. Each party to the contract must have capability to enter into the contract. What does this mean? This means that they should be of legal age. In different countries, there's different legal age. For example, in India, you need to be 18 or above, means you need to be an adult to enter into a contract. In other countries, there might be a lower limit of 16 years to enter into a contract. In addition, contracts cannot be formed for the purpose of an illegal act. You can't say that, okay, you kill that person for me, and I'll pay you money, and later on you can't go to the court and there you discuss that we were actually we had actually entered into a contract, and this party is not fulfilling their part of the contract. No, that is not a legally enforceable contract because the consideration is illegal. The acts which are needed to be done to fulfill that contract are illegal. So they should not be for some illegal act. So these are the basic things which make a contract legal and binding. By creating legislation surrounding simple contracts, the government can protect consumers from being taken advantage of by the business. So whenever you are purchasing anything or you are purchasing any services, any goods or services, you are actually entering into a contract where you are paying a consideration against some promises, some consideration coming from the seller. All right. So if you are not getting the right description goods or the right description services, then that is a breach of contract and you can take legal help to get your money back or maybe get your demands fulfilled. All right. For example, children will be unable to sign binding contracts, yes, as they are unlikely to be fully aware of the consequences. So this is how the businesses and the customers, they are legally entered into some relationship. If the customer, like a child, is not able to enter into a legal relationship, then that is not an enforceable contract. Okay, so this is how the law of contract works. There's TYU 7, probably the last TYU, which I'll solve with you. There are many others which you have to solve yourself. For this chapter I'm talking about, John has agreed with Matteo that he will pay him $200 if Matteo maintains his garden for the next year. Okay, so they have agreed. There's an agreement, yes. One part is the consideration is on one part the consideration is $200, and on other part the consideration is maintaining the garden for 1 year. At the end of the year, John refuses to pay Matteo in spite of Matteo having undertaken the work agreed. So Matteo has fulfilled his part of the promise, but John refuses. Why John has refused? John has told Matteo that because the contract was not written and signed by both the parties, he has no obligation to pay for the work done. Is it necessary for the contract to be written and signed? No, absolutely not. This is a valid contract, and since Matteo has performed his part of the work, now John has to perform his part as well. That means he needs to pay Matteo $200. If he fails to pay, Matteo can sue John and can get it through legal help. Okay, so John is incorrect here. For a contract to be enforceable, there's no legal requirement for it to be written. Okay. So that's all for this chapter. I think there should be no confusions regarding this one. So one more thing, students. Now we'll be moving on to the next chapter, chapter number 7. That is economic environment. Again, we'll be studying external analysis only, but that will be related from economic point of view. That will be studying from economic point of view. For that, you need to have a very sound knowledge of economics. So in case you do not have good knowledge about economics, or you have forgotten what you had studied in school, then I will provide some videos, especially of chapters like demand, like supply, cost, revenue, all such chapters which are part of chapter number 7. But in chapter number 7, you actually are studying the advanced version of that economics which you have studied in maybe class 11th or 12th. So to understand that advanced level, you first need to brush up your concepts of lower classes. If you have not studied economics at all, or if you have forgotten everything, then I'll support you by providing you some videos. I'll make a folder named extra economics or something like that in your course. You go through those lectures, you'll feel like, okay, these are not these are at very basic level, but those are important. Even if you are confident about your concepts, then also I recommend you can go through those lectures, and that will help a lot in studying the next chapter. All right.